Welcome to the first episode of The Kitchen Table, where we take you behind the kitchen door to explore the fascinating world of food and hospitality. I'm your host, Stanley, founder of Hook & Herd Distribution. Our mission at Hook & Herd is to blend old school values with modern technology, providing the food and hospitality industry with personal, trustworthy interactions. Hook & Herd offers quick responses, no delivery charges, low minimums, competitive pricing, and genuine care, all to build strong relationships and set a new industry standard. Today we have an exceptional guest who has left an indelible mark on the culinary scene. He's a Chef Extraordinaire whose journey has spanned prestigious kitchens and culinary events, blending diverse cultural influences into unforgettable dishes. He holds a university degree in animal biology, known for his innovation and mentorship. He's held numerous esteemed titles and inspired many aspiring chefs. On the kitchen table, we speak to experts in the industry to the end consumer, bringing you insights from every corner of the food world. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Chef Will Lew. Chef Will, thank you for joining us.
So, an introduction for myself. Number one, I can vouch for everything Stanley says. I've been working with this guy for probably over a decade, right? Well over a decade.
At least.
Right? And indirectly, probably even more.
Yeah.
But so everything that we're talking about today, but even everything that led up to this moment in time, I do very much believe in this sort of, a weird culinary fate to meet you and to have this moment where you can venture off within your own initiatives to then provide so much more than we ever could assume or think or want as the chefs or restaurateurs who you provide so much to. So that's a huge part for us. And interesting enough, I mean, there's so many things with my career that has led to this moment and probably with yourself too, just figuring out like how this moment happened for cooking. Like the strange moments, like for myself, how do I become a chef? And a quick little overview of that, just so everyone else understands, like everything sort of happens on your lap at the right moment, at the right time. You got to capitalize on those moments to take full advantage of whatever you think your goals or dreams are. So, example for myself, I grew up. First job I ever thought I was going to take was to be a chef around 3 or 4 years old that I can remember, and then that's because my grandfather was a chef. But and I would cook with them every weekend and not watch TV or play Lego or anything, but I'd just like watch them in the kitchen and watch the artistry. But also after that, he would teach me how to draw or woodwork, and so like that's how I started my creative aspect. But then I quickly forgot that for a while. Right? You get sort of, just like any sort of mundane job, you get sort of set into the tone of the everyday, and you're looking for the next vacation, you're looking for the next thing. But so that was kind of like the life leading up to it. But then I went to university, like you said, I have an animal biology degree, and I was also playing music at the same time. So I was a violinist, and I played in a bunch of musicals around the city. And then one summer, and I quit, and I forgot a lot about, and I wanted to be an artist, so I forgot a lot about the culinary world, or what I thought was a cool job would be cooking. I always thought I'd be an artist of some sort, or animator, but definitely a musician of some way. So I focused so much on that. So one summer I just walked around, this was early university, and I went around Yaletown. And I walked into a bunch of places, and you might have heard this story a few times, but definitely worth talking about because I did not even know what a chef was called. So I walked into a place that was like, oh, you want to talk to the kitchen manager? So everyone that I talked to, from Chipino's restaurant all the way to all these other fancy foods, that asked for a kitchen manager, and just like laughed me at the door, which I should have been. Yeah. But then I ended up walking to all places, the original Global, and then I walked into there and I asked for the kitchen manager, and that big scary chef walked out, and he's like, "What do you want to do here?" And I'm like, "I'll do anything." I showed my resume, music, bunch of nothing else, bunch of volunteer work, and then he's like, "You have no experience." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm willing to do anything." So he's like, "Okay, when can you start?" I said, "I can start now." He's like, "Follow me to the kitchen." I'm like, "Okay." Then I had one suit on, and it was like the one suit I would wear for music and everything else. And he threw me. I was like, I walked in there. Okay, I'm going to be a busser. I'm going to be a cook today. This is cool, right? I walked by the only open kitchen I've ever seen in my life at the time. I was like, seeing so much energy. It was about close to 5 o'clock, so there was a bunch of buzz happening in the restaurant already. So I did think that. So anyways, he threw me in the district. I had no idea. He didn't let me change. I finished that day, ruined suit and everything else. Didn't even know how to pick up pans at the time. But I also, so that day I sort of saw like the best of what I thought like was the culinary world, but I also could see, when you could see on TV, like that sort of egotistical side of everything, and like a little bit of controversy there and a little bit of just like inhumanity. So I definitely knew that day forward, I was like, oh, well, at least whatever I do in the future, I'm going to be a calm, empathetic human, but do the things with purpose. And on top of that, that was the first day I saw food as art, because I always wanted to be an artist, but I never knew how to become that artist. Going to school for biology was awesome, but playing music was the dream. But combine those two and actually see the culinary world. Even though I cooked with my grandfather all the time, I still saw it as food and sustenance and the way to bring people together, but I never saw it as a culinary arts. So from that day forward, it changed my perspective about everything. And I definitely would say all the time that day I saw my culinary life flash before my eyes. So like I knew for sure I would continue to be a chef. So long story short, I worked doing that. I did music and finished university. Washing dishes for 2 years until they let me start properly cooking and just worked my way up. So I never went to culinary school, but I see the importance of everyone's journey being unique to themselves.
Yeah, that's amazing because you kind of started from the very bottom where you didn't go to culinary school. You worked your way up from a dishwasher, busboy to all the way to the kitchen, where a lot of people will go to school and go straight from school to a kitchen.
Yeah,
and
so the journey was interesting because we didn't really have a lot of Asian chefs around at the time. Very few, barely none that I could really mention off the top of my head who were running the show. There might be one or two cooks here or there, but even then, literally was one or two in a sea of very few.
Mm-hmm.
So, and back then, and to this day too, but back then people took cooking from the very beginning a lot more seriously. So they would work from the time that they were legally allowed to work in the kitchen, and they would spend their whole time doing that, then going to culinary school and just taking that very traditional route. That was the expected route. That was the only way to get in. And this nerdy Asian kid trying to like be a cook while doing other things that are not related to food. They just never saw me really as someone who took it as seriously as they did. But that was also a moment in time where the change of guard started happening, where like you would see more diversity slowly getting into the kitchen. You would see a lot more a slow change in the attitude of how people treated each other there. But it was definitely a slow change needing people like myself or yourself to also spearhead a little bit more empathy in the kitchen.
Yeah, and I can relate to that because my dad actually owned a restaurant when I was young, a Chinese restaurant in Hong Kong style. So, like you said, as soon as you're able to work, I actually started working in the kitchen and learning from my dad when I was 8 years old. And I dishwashing, busboy, server, and that's where I started to learn using the big cleavers. Had many accidents, a lot of burn marks, and I still remember this one time where I dropped a bunch of dishes and my hand went straight into it because someone mopped the floor and didn't put the sign up, and actually got stitches over here. So that was something fun and a learning journey.
But I think like the culinary world, not just the kitchen, but front of house and just restaurants. And, like it gives you I always say it made me grow faster than I knew how to.
Yes.
I saw so many more things in the world, in my shelter world, that I didn't actually know. And then even day one, I never even stayed up until 4 a.m. in the morning, and I finished washing dishes at 4 in the morning. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm surrounded by a bunch of adults. It's not my bedtime, something silly like that. Even though I was in university, but I never got to see that world yet. You also see so many other amazing things. You also see so many more interesting things, but that's what makes you grow up. And that's what also I always think that everyone should go through the culinary world and restaurant scene in general, at least one little part of their life, just because it does. You encounter so many walks of life there, and you encounter so many situations, but also the big thing is you also encounter so many different guests that allow you to figure out how you communicate best. It teaches you how to sort of create positive influence with having your voice in a place where there's so many strong voices and strong opinions. So again, I think it's a great place for life lessons in general.
Okay. Well, you're very great with people, so have you ever experienced the front of house aspect of things?
Yeah, I mean, I was never officially in the front of house, but I'll give you a fun example which sort of started me off, and I think a lot of cooks and chefs don't do this, but because the comfort zone is the kitchen, hiding in the kitchen is not true. But the kitchen is already so damn busy all the time, you can't really afford to go up there. You have to really take the initiative to want to go up there. But so I'll give you the story that sort of I'm really grateful for. So when they opened Coast, the original Coast, I went to open it with them. This is back in Yale Town days.
Oh wow! Okay.
Right, and then as a dishwasher, but after my 2-year tenure with them, washing dishes and stuff, the first stations they put me on was pastries. Okay. So at the time, I'm like, oh cool, this is pastries, and there's so few pastry cooks. There's so many savory cooks. Maybe I should be a pastry chef, right? So anyways, my first shift ever, first time I ever put on my uniform, and oh, this is so cool. I've earned this after 2 years without knowing what I'm doing. But I knew how to make food look beautiful, or things look beautiful. I didn't know what I was playing. I didn't know why I was doing it. Just trying to make things look nice. I didn't know anything about food costs or nothing.
Yeah.
But that night, my first shift I was by myself, and then we had a big center table there. And that center table was the tasting menu table. So the menu was not set every day, but it was busy every day, right? And the chef at the time, he was the corporate chef at the time. I said he was one of my greatest mentors because he was one of the people who gave me one of the only opportunities in the kitchen when everyone else around cooks and even chefs were a little bit against someone who didn't take the traditional route. So anyways, he said, okay, this dessert, there's 16 people out there. They will make me 16 desserts, whatever you want. I'm like, okay, great. I get to be creative, anything I want. I don't have to follow the menu or something. Yeah, do whatever you want. And then I'm like, okay, chef, I finished it. He's okay. And then everyone's running out. I was like, well, take the last plate because we can't carry it on. And then I'm sure he already planned this out in his head. But then after I put the last plate down, he's like, I'm gonna hold it right there. I'm like, why? He's like, oh, let me introduce to the table, because it was a huge show, right? He was putting on a show for everyone, entertaining everybody. And like, he was certainly the heart of the room in the kitchen and in the front of house. So when you say front of house, the experience that I did have is I never knew how to talk about food, and I didn't know how to talk about food that moment in time. So I was like, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to our executive pastry chef. Being my first day, he's like, here's my executive pastry chef, Will Lew. I'm like, he's like, can you explain to our guests, like after their amazing multi-course, 15-course dinner or whatever, right? West Coast extravaganza, can you tell them what you made? And I'm like, excuse me? And then I like stared at like the 16 faces staring back, so happy and so like ecstatic, and this was the last course they had. And I was like, man, like at the time I couldn't even get 2 words out in a university presentation, let alone talk to a crowd. So I was like, you have chocolate. And then I ran back to the kitchen, so embarrassed. and then like he loved it, and he was like laughing. I think he played it up as I went back, and he was like, "Oh, he must be whatever. He must be sleepy today or something, right?" But then, front of house wise, he made me every time I made dessert after that day. He made me go to every table that ordered a dessert to tell them what it is, to talk to them, to hear about their opinion, to like just let them speak. And if someone didn't order dessert that day, which was rare, but they didn't, he would just order it for them to make me go talk to people.
Wow.
Right? Which I still do to this day. With all the cooks, every cook I encourage to speak with people, because the more you speak with your guests, the more you actually get an intrinsic feeling of you almost can read their mind through food. You can almost read their heart through food. And so you can already know how to make them happy with them just by hearing a few words from them after some period of time of doing this. Because the more people you talk to, you start to build sort of like your formula of what people enjoy, because they give you enough hints to let you know what they love, but they also give you enough hints of what they might not be comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then you find that responsibility to try to figure out how to lead them in a way that can open their mind a little bit, but let them still be comfortable in your space, because your restaurant should be a safe space for them to not just enjoy themselves, but to enjoy the food that they're there to patronize. And so yeah, I mean, front of house wise, it's like this. And so many open kitchens. Like, I guess one more example, I never was a server, but I would deliver food all the time. I would love, and I always made other cooks and chefs go out with me to the table, especially, you know how much I love to do custom tasting menus, right? So that's where we present every course. That's where we are the server, we are the chef, we are the host, and everything in between, because we're there to not only put on like a dinner for them, but we're there to entertain them. It is theater. Food is theater, right?
Yes.
And as you sort of stated, like, I do like to use food to really tell a deeper story.
So would you say that it broke the stage fight fairly early?
Yeah.
And you're doing that yourself as a mentor for your team?
I would say that for sure. And I would also say when I was washing dishes, I was in musical theater, and I was in the orchestra pit, so you never see you see like our head, but you wouldn't see us perform, other than like hear us perform. But that was a huge part of understanding food being a stage for me as well, because at the time, obviously I still washing dishes, but I started interacting with the dancers, the singers, the actors, right? And they're so much more eccentric than the average person in the orchestra. But then you would integrate with them, you would understand what gets them going. You could definitely see that their outgoingness allowed you to very much realize that to put on a show for people, you can still be yourself, but you have to be a little bit outside your comfort zone. And so seeing theater, seeing the theatrics of food now, using it, like I always say, like the kitchen is our stage, and the plate is our canvas, and utilizing those platforms for ourselves, it's more than just what the restaurant can provide. It's what we can use that platform to do now with sustainability, or to lift up other people in the community, using food as just our version of communication.
Do you still play any instruments?
I do. I mean, I rarely play my violin, even though that's a shame because that was like what I wanted to go to university for, realistically. I play lots of guitar still. I pretend to play piano. I used to write tons of my own music. I always thought I'd be a rock star and had super long hair. And like, I had cornrows at one point, you know, like silly enough. Yeah. And like I really thought I was going to be some silly rock star because that's what I wanted to do. So like music is intrinsically strongly part of what how I draw inspiration from. Not necessarily through like just notes and the sound of it, but utilizing that philosophy of like capturing people not just through one medium. If it's just audible or taste with food or something, it's like capturing people with having them engage with whatever your craft is at that time.
Do you ever play the instrument before creating a menu, or during a menu creation?
Not really, but I do find like, you know, when there's certain moments in your life that you need some clarity or that you want to feel something or feel it harder. Yeah, I mean, like it always helps to like play music in the sense that, and when I say play music, I'm basically writing my own at the time. I don't want to play someone else's music to feel something. It's almost like utilizing it to build out an emotion that you don't know how to use words for, which then by playing it out loud through notes or through whatever rhythm you're doing, I do find that it helps me figure out myself after. Not that it gives me the answer, but it gives you the clarity to find that answer.
The creativity of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So mentorship and growth with your own team, what kind of experiences would you say is the best experience you had as a mentor?
I mean, every experience is a best experience because every single cook or dishwasher or chef or front of house or manager and it doesn't extend just to the kitchen, it extends beyond, because there's so many examples where, you know, there's someone in high school or even elementary school who's like, oh, I really like the food scene. Maybe I want to become a chef in the future. And obviously, more in this generation, people are more and more into people being cooks, right? Yeah. Back when we grew up, like, it was seen as laboring job, you know, and even though my grandfather was a chef, I knew that he wasn't super happy that I was going into the cooking world, especially when I was already in university, because that's the whole reason why I'm pretty sure he thinks that he came here to get a better life. Yeah. But for me, the kitchen world and the restaurant world is the best life. So to answer that question, I mean, it extends beyond just the individuals you deal with per day at work. It extends to whoever you actually are influencing outside of it too. Because the guest could then be like, oh, can you please talk to my nephew? Or can you talk to my daughter about like cooking? Because they're really interested in food sciences or something. Yeah. And then you just end up, you're like, okay, you have a conversation with them for hours, or they come to the restaurant, you're talking to them and then they're sitting there taking their notes, and they're like writing a whole essay about you because you're inspiring them to talk about food in a different way. But when it comes down to like just our cooks in general, like every day is a lesson for just not myself, but for them too. And if I was to say I could pick one out, then I would be disregarding all the other amazing conversations and lessons that we had with everyone throughout our tenure. What is it, 23 years of doing this now? You know, roughly, if I could do my math properly. Yeah.
You still keep in touch with all of your mentors?
I would say not that much, in the sense that there are always people who gave me opportunity, but the mentorship actually came from so many other people that a single individual. What I do find, for example, the chef who gave me a chance to go talk to the tables and told every other cook who was being mean to me to actually teach me, or to people who gave me my first real jobs in, example, the Fairmont, who took me on when I never went to culinary school. I don't have my red seal, you know, like technically I shouldn't be a chef. Like in all reality, like everything about my resume means I shouldn't be even a cook or a chef. But there's moments in time where people just they can see potential, right? And I guess in those moments you gotta take advantage that they can see it and that you respect the fact that they can see it, so you try your best to live up to it. So the people I would call my mentors are people who gave me an opportunity. But the mentoring itself has come from so many different aspects of life, not just in the culinary world, right? Maybe the music world, maybe in my university world, just friends in general who can hear you out, so you can build your own identity within this very competitive and sometimes cutthroat world.
Yeah, very. Culinary challenges. What's your biggest challenge that you faced so far in your journey?
Challenge? I think the biggest one was just I go back to this moment in time, because once you pass that threshold, the world's clear for you, right?
Yeah.
Like once you're like kind of in and like you're sort of accepted as a cook, or you've sort of gone through the hazing, then you're ultimately now the world's your oyster. Like you still need to prove it every single day. But so I would say like it was when I was still a dishwasher, leading up to the time which I knew I could start becoming a cook within that world. But basically every cook that was there, they protected their station, they protected their knowledge, they protected their job security. So I was a threat to it. And so even though I was no real threat, because I didn't know what I was doing at the time, because I would go around and ask the cooks every day, how'd you make that? Or what are you making? How'd you make it? Constantly. And they would get super like annoyed with me. And they would tell me to get off the line or shut up or whatever. But then example, that chef who gave me the opportunity, he was the one saying, no, he's asking you a question. So tell him how you make that. Yeah. Show him how to make risotto. Show him how to make the gnocchi. Oh, but chef, I'm going to be so behind and stuff. You can do more things in life than just one thing at a time, right? So like, I think the big challenge, I remember very strongly that I asked someone one day, like, oh, how'd you make that? And then he stopped what he was doing. He's like, well, I really appreciate you being like very into the culinary world. I value the fact that you're going to university, you're trying hard, and it's something I can't do. I've been cooking since I was 14. I went to culinary school, I paid my way through everything. I don't believe in the way you're doing it, and hell no, you're never gonna make it. So you can ask me all you want, but you're not gonna know what you're doing.
So did you ever take that what he said?
Yeah, I still remember, and it wasn't motivation. It wasn't like I'm a basketball player and someone's like showing me their 4 rings and I don't have any rings yet or something. But I still remember that, and he became a really good friend. He became a really great friend, especially once I became a cook. But at that time, I can just see that there was a barrier I needed to cross within the stigmatism of at the time. And that moment didn't hurt me, nothing like that, right? Like that moment was just like a moment of like letting me know like the time and place is still not necessarily open to that mentality. Whereas now, if you want to be a chef, you can be a chef tomorrow. Yeah. If someone like wants to buy a jacket and put their name on it and open a restaurant without the experience to do it, I mean, they might be really successful, but they can also just call themselves a chef right away. And that fine distinction between like a chef and a cook, like I still see myself as a cook. Like we do jobs that aren't necessarily cooking anymore as much, but we're in the jobs of providing mentality for them to express themselves through that medium. Whereas before it's like we only do what we tell you to do. You stick with it. And it still needs to be that way. Restaurants need to be consistent. Restaurants need to have recipes. Restaurants need to provide the same thing based on what you say your menu is. And that's a must. But within that realm too, that's why I really value cooking for people, and I encourage every cook and every chef around me to step out their comfort zone, to like cook on the fly or create a menu. Like work doubly as hard as a regular day, even though it means that you're doing more work for the effort you're putting in, but it pays off because you can see the impact of your artistry. You can see the impact of your efforts, not just to the cooks, but like the fact that you can actually do it. And how it actually affects the guest out there, and what kind of connection they can forever make with that realm or that world or those people.
Okay. To touch upon the challenges in the culinary world, with the pandemic, how did you adapt and how did you manage to...
The pandemic was an interesting time. I just before the pandemic hit like super hard, and I might have reached out to you during that time. Like I was on the cusp of being like the executive chef of Ocean Wise, which was my dream job because again, biology. One major factor that changed my culinary direction was actually at Fairmont Pacific Rim when we made the lobby lounge, which is the sushi bar or the raw bar. We made that the first 100% Ocean Wise sushi restaurant in all of Canada. It was it's only 3 restaurants at the time were 100% Ocean Wise, like back in 2011 or 12 or whatever it was. So, and that moment reignited my personal love for the biological world, right? Hence, it like actually played into my degree. But using food as art, mixing that with my degree allowed me to see an actual mission I had going forward. And once I recognized that that's my calling with food, as I continued to develop my skills, but definitely already had a sort of direction going. Like the food I was creating and the mantra and the ethos which I want to cook with is always sort of drawing from our natural world to then preserve it, to then share it back to our guest on the plate, on the table, on the menu, as back in its natural essence, so that we can actually value what is what nature is actually giving us. So long story short, when it came down to Oceanwise, the job was there, and then the pandemic sort of hit, and they're like, okay, maybe we can take a hold of this. We can't start it. But then just before that, they're like, oh, because Oceanwise used to be with inside the Vancouver Aquarium. Yeah. So I'm like, and then just as the news was going out, they're like, oh, also the aquarium might shut down, because obviously with the whatever millions of mouths they got to feed in the aquarium, and it being a non-profit, it quickly was running out of funds. So then I, along with so many chefs help, right, and also so many generous donators, right, I'm sure including us together at the time, and so many other people who also didn't really have an outlet, we just had to sort of create an initiative with the support of Oceanwise, but also especially with the support of all the chefs around who didn't have guests in their kitchen, who would only serve things to go or frozen or whatever, and then so many different suppliers who had probably a plethora of things that they couldn't move, sadly, right? So what better way to utilize our time, our generosity, and our skills and everything else and products to like try to raise money for some cause. So that was so we did something called like Chefs for Vancouver Aquarium. We just got all the donations from so many people, generous donators around the city and around this province, and then we let the chefs be as creative as possible to make the best chowder they could to then sell, which they could keep a small portion of it or decide to donate everything back, and it all just went back to saving the Vancouver Aquarium. Right, so I galvanized about 30 different restaurants after. Yeah, I mean, for being pandemic and just selling soup, we did pretty good. We made over 30 grand for like 2 weeks or something. Okay. It was not bad, you know, but like, that was a very defining moment in the sense that you're asking what's the most difficult time. So that was something, I didn't do it to keep the job. I did it because we wanted to really believe in the system, believe in Oceanwise, believe in the aquarium, believe in the education,
the community as well.
And build that community, and also find ways to bring more light to all the chefs and restaurants who are maybe for certain struggling at the time.
Yeah.
So I would say like that was one major moment of clarity that helped, although difficult because, you know, I didn't have a job at the time, no one had a job at the time, but how do we utilize the generosity of everyone around us to do something greater than ourselves, to give back to something greater than ourselves? So that was definitely, I would call it a challenge, but that was definitely noteworthy in the evolution of giving back.
How important is community and collaboration?
The most important, absolutely the most important. Like, when I run menus and things, I will ask everyone, not just cooks. I'll ask the dishwasher, I'll ask the janitor, I'll ask you, right? I'll ask like a little kid that's on the table. Hey, what's your favorite food? Hey, what do you think about whatever? Like everyone, the things that they say might not provide the answer to what I'm looking for, because I don't know what it is, but it provides a pathway for my brain or our collection of our brains.
Little nuggets here.
Yeah, to like lead to another thought that actually always makes it better. So I always say that every menu we write, or every tasting or every restaurant that we open, it's actually never as good if I just do it myself. Even though you have to have a figurehead, even though you have to have someone who is spearheading, the idea is I want to, just like the chef who gave me the chance to cook, who told other people to let me cook and leave me alone and let me grow. And just like the times I have to talk to every single table, if I'm not engaging from the front of house to the busser to the dishwasher to the bar back to the exec sous chef or anyone else, then the thing is never the same. Because if they can't buy into it as well, they don't feel some pride within what they're doing or connection to it, there is zero purpose for myself to want to do it solely. Like I never like to cook by myself. I don't like to work by myself, right? Like some people want to just like be in their own space. Like the more collaborative, the better the product.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And the more we can give back to the community.
Yes. What about with like a balancing act? Balancing your creativity, your family life, your personal time, instruments, like and running a kitchen is pretty tough. How do you maintain that creative edge?
I always find like a kitchen, and the job is more than a kitchen. We just talk about kitchens in general because this is our passion.
Yes.
But to run a business is more than just sit in the kitchen all day. There's more to think about. But for the simplicity of our conversation, it is a very obsessive world. I get overly obsessed with it. You think, you dream that you're drinking this orange juice with you is giving me another idea. It's giving me so many other things that be like, oh, this might connect to the restaurant opening. Okay, if it's this orange juice, what can we do with it? Or can it look like this but actually taste completely different? Or can we utilize this to tell a different story? Or like it brings up so many different parameters, right? Mm-hmm. Are we talking about drought? Are we talking about what part of North America this from? Like it could be anything. And those lead to their own individual stories every single time. But to find that balance is not that easy. Like if you're obsessed with working out, or you're obsessed with basketball, or you have an obsession to gain a certain goal, it does consume your life, and sometimes it, for sure, for myself too, like makes me overdo what I could be doing when I can be sort of delegating more to other people. But it's only because I want to. You know, like I always say to people, like, oh, if you're working your 6th day or something, or 7th day, I'm like, I'm not here because I have to. I'm here because I want to. But what does that mean for balance of life or all the other things that you enjoy? You have to have a strong support network around you. You have to have people who believe in what you're doing and believe in your mission. And not just your family or your direct family or your relatives, but like even those who just see you every so often because they need to be able to cheer you on. But also sometimes remind you to take a step back.
For sure. Yeah. I experienced that as well. New company, Hook and Herd, being distribution, being sales. You know how I work night and day.
Exactly.
There's never stopping. And it's same thing. It's an obsession where I hear the phone go off. I need to answer it. I need to respond right away. I just feel naked without my phone, or I feel odd when I don't, or feel bad when I don't reply right away.
I do find, and that's why I think so many people in this industry respect what you and your team are doing. Definitely, I'm a huge fan. Because you have to have that. I always tell people, like, you have to have a relationship with who you're working with, and even if it's someone you see once a month, once a year, like some of my best friends I see once a year. Because you just have too many things going on in life. But when you see them again,
it's like nothing.
No time has passed. The only difference is time has passed. But you don't notice it. So when we get to work with people like yourselves, where you have to create that community, that connection, you start realizing who you can lean on, and you start realizing who you can trust. So, example for the people out there, like with you, there's no time that you ever said no to any initiative I ever want to do. There's no time you ever made a fuss about a single item that I'm asking for, or to be donated, or to be brought to me, or to be picked up, or anything. Or no matter how hard it is to get, or no matter how easy it is to get, they're exactly the same. And I think that when you're asking about community in general, you can't build community just by being the sole person. Like, you want to be able to uplift other people around you. So, example, if we're doing the BC Seafood Festival, or we're doing fundraiser next week, right, in Maple Ridge, if we're going to do all these different things, I certainly want to make sure that we're not the sole focus on it. Even though we might be the draw for the people to donate to it, that the love of it should always be shared to those who are also always giving back consistently, generously, selflessly. Obviously, we all know it's a business, but like at the same time, I think being leaders in the fields that we are in, and there's so many other leaders out there too, but being the leaders in the field that we are in, we have that responsibility to take care of each other, which then helps take care of the community and the environment.
I agree. That's well said. Farm to table philosophy.
Sure.
So with increasing awareness about sustainable and ethical food sourcing, how do you incorporate your farm to table practices in your kitchen, in your dishes?
So like every restaurant has a different concept. Every restaurant has a different philosophy, but you always can impart yours in it, or you can dominate with it, right? I do find the last few jobs I had were pretty lucky that just the previous job I have now, we had our own farm, right? We had our own farm at Cortez Island, and we worked with the farmers directly, like every year. Doesn't mean we're getting produce all year round, but when it was the season, that's what was the identity of our place. Even a job that I was working with on the island, we had also our own farm. We had herds of deer, our own cattle. We had even an emu. We didn't eat the emu, right? But we had an emu, right? We had all these things, and that's that is genuinely farm to table within your own company.
Yes.
But not many people are lucky that way. So I think when we talk about this farm to table, you know, or the hook to the table, or the herd to the table, whatever that may be, I think as long as we're conscious about choosing that way and conscious about the story and the impact of the story we're trying to tell, and the impact of what choices we're making when we're speaking with yourself, or because you know, every time I ask you, oh, is it ocean wise, is it this, or where did it come from, or you know, like all these different parameters, but then that farm to table is still there. Doesn't mean that you have to own the farm. I'm just lucky that we got to own the farm.
Yes.
For a few jobs down the road, right? But like, it doesn't. You don't have to have a farm to do farm to table, or ocean to table, or aquaculture to table, or anything of that nature, or wild to table. You know?
Any favorite suppliers, local suppliers, farms that you enjoy working with?
Yeah, you.
Thank you.
And I only say that not just as a fun sort of stab at you, but like a meaningful one, because I know that to make what you do happen, you need to engage the community around you with food as well. And if you can engage the community around food, and we trust each other to do so, to support those that we want to support, while bringing like what we need at the time that we need it, or to steer us in the right direction, that's the best people I want to work with. And I mean, on the route of talking about suppliers or producers or growers or anything else, I would definitely, and I'm sure we'll talk about it further, but I definitely want to bring in golden eagle sailfish. Because example, Chef Jade, who I met years back when I did a ocean-wise filming with Ned Bell and Taka to do a night harvest on Vancouver Island for oysters and stuff. We went to Vancouver Island sea salt at the same time, and we learned all about these things, and he just sort of recognized, however, through the grapevine, that we were chefs, and that I was a chef, and we started talking about food, and he's like, you know, I don't do it anymore, but like, I would love to talk more about it. And I sort of didn't really think much of it at the time. I'm like, oh, this is a cool guy, and he really knows his stuff, but like, I don't think I'd ever see this guy on the island ever again. And then years later, like, you know, you see him on Chef vs. Wild, and you see him do all these cool things, even though he wasn't really in the culinary world at the time when I met him. But and then now he's spearheading, you know, the chef identity and kind of the face of golden eagle sablefish in general, where he's just like you, is a really good example of someone who's super genuine and generous all the time. Could be like, oh, here, I invite you to go to our hatchery. Or we'll invite you to go to Cayuga up northwest side of Vancouver Island, like a 6-hour journey to get there, down dirt road where his tire popped. You know, and then to live on a floating aquaculture lot, like cabin for like 3 days while they're being so immensely transparent with what they're doing and so connected to what they are giving us, and being so generous with like not just spending the time to like take us around, even though we were and to even just let us film everything. There's no time that they're like, oh, don't touch this, don't look at this, right? Cover the camera. Like, no, we want you to be able to feel free to film and talk and ask us any question you want.
Basically, they have nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide, and if there's a little bit of controversy there, then at least they can explain it, right? And they can say, no, this is our belief, this is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to help our community, because it's also everyone working there is indigenous, right? And from a certain nation that's around there, so they're providing not only food for us, but they're providing a livelihood that maybe some tradition has been taken away from that nation, to allow them to then go back into the world of fish and fishing, but in a more modernized sense. And everyone working there was so excited about us being there, because we were also there to cook for them and eat a big dinner for the community and bring everyone together, because we were filming something that we want to showcase, talk about sustainable aquaculture in general, and break those stigmas and break that sort of what is responsible aquaculture versus what's irresponsible aquaculture. So,
before we dive into more of the main topic today, which is farm fish, what is your signature dish?
I always say that it's the next one you make, because everyone I do, I don't really like to ever do again. I don't like to cook the same thing ever again. There's variations and stuff, but like, I never want to do the same thing, because that means that story, that moment, that because we are always trying to write food with a purpose, right? We always try to write food and the menu or the dish for whatever that reason was that we wrote it. So if I reuse it in some way, exactly what it is, that I would 100% be doing myself a disservice with, because our reasoning for it is no longer the same reason. So the favorite dish is the next one that hasn't been made because like you never know what's gonna happen. You're so excited to see how it always turns out. And like all the other events that we do that are outside of our regular jobs that we all volunteer for, that the best part is to see it all come together as a community of chefs, but also as a community of people putting on it together, community people who are donating and supplying it to us. And then that's the most beautiful part. So that dish is the next favorite dish. And then the next mission or the next purpose, that becomes the next favorite dish.
Love it. I think that's the first time I've heard that someone doesn't have a signature dish in itself, but the next dish.
Yeah, the next dish, because it allows you to have, it perpetuates your mission.
Yeah.
And if you can perpetuate your mission, that means the mission is still going forward.
Okay, great. Do you need to... On to our main topic, which is farm fish.
Perfect.
Let's start off with, what are some of your ethical concerns about farm fish?
Some of them, number one, I think there's so much stigma behind farm versus wild versus land farming, like, land-based aquaculture, open pen aquaculture, everything in between. I think the ethical concern that I have is, number one, there's a human rights version, right? If we're talking about overseas and certain demographics and certain age groups and economical statuses of certain people who may be taken advantage of with certain different species that are being farmed. That is one thing that is I didn't even think about until sort of just delving deeper into like the sustainability world, because we're just talking about sustainability of food, but we're not talking about the sustainability of humanity. So, and this kind of ties back into talking about golden eagle sablefish, where it is indigenous operation. So if there wasn't there and there's no longer salmon fishing for them, but their way of life has always been through fish, and their culture has been through fish, and see how much they actually respect and value the fish that they're farming, how much they love it, and also once they're catching the wild, right, for fun and everything else, like you know that they're genuine about it. Yeah. I also think the unethical part is, if we're introducing species that don't belong in our waters, even though it might be for food security's sake, and I don't own them, and I'm not, like to back it with the science, who knows which one to read. But I'm definitely saying if something is not endemic to us, that could be an issue, and that would be an issue.
Does farm fish affect your menu choices?
Like for me, for the longest time, I just stayed away from salmon on my menus in general, just because I didn't want to really go down that path of communicating, because everyone will always ask, is this wild salmon? Is this farm salmon? Or why is it farm salmon? Or as funny as it sounds, steelhead, is it salmon or is it a trout? And you can't even answer it. Like no one can answer it, and it's a debate you'll constantly have. And even when you try to go on the DFO website, it like tells you both answers kind of sometimes. So again, it's more of a funny version, but like reality is I have stayed away recently from salmon, like not recently, for the longest time, just because I wanted people to celebrate the fish instead of debating the fish. As much as you would want to support those who are growing or fishing for them, it was just a personal choice at the time, right? At the time.
So when are we doing some catering? They insisted that it had to be some type of salmon. Not necessarily farmed or wild, but
they wanted salmon, right? Yeah. So then there's a few ways. Either one big thing example I always heard from Ned Bell that he always said is like, why don't we make the protein the garnish instead of the protein the main part? And that's always stuck with me in that sense, because if we, sometimes it's not how much you use, but it's not like what you use, but how much you use, right? And are we going to gorge on like pounds and pounds of, dozens of fish, or can we just respect one fish, do the best we can for that portion that we have, but then also celebrate everything else around it that's providing for people within that course? So if someone was to like force me to use salmon, number one, wouldn't force me what to use, or else I wouldn't want to do it for them. If someone's telling me, you're gonna have to use whale meat or something, right? Then I'm like, no, of course, like you idiot, right? Of course not.
Yeah.
So no one then find someone who's willing to serve you that, right? But at the same time, if it's something that's a little bit trickier to say, like, my personal thing might be trying to stay away from cooking with salmon at the time. Like now there's better studies, now there's more out there saying, these species are actually considered ocean-wise or acceptable or whatever, and that may change. But at the current state, that's what it is. And you also need to do your own research, but you also need to trust the people who you believe in trusting, to let them give you the best science and the data possible, even though there's so many things out there that can be easily skewed with the data. So you just make the best choices for it. But if someone was to say this, then my rebuttal would be, oh, let me steer you this way. Or have you thought about steelhead, for instance? Have you thought about Arctic char? Have you thought about, have you thought about sablefish? It's not salmon. But sometimes I just do it, like, I'll take the hit on the cost so that you can realize how awesome this sablefish is versus like your Atlantic salmon or something that's grown here. No. Like, there's awesome Atlantic salmon out there. Actually, one of my favorite fish is Atlantic salmon. But again, just responsibly, right? Responsibly. So just let either we choose or like sometimes, a lot of the time I want to make the educational choice. So you just become a little bit generous for the situation and your business or whatever. Like if I was catering with my own money, then I'm just like giving a little bit of the cost that I should be making so that I can help them recognize something else. Doesn't mean I should do that, but I often do, especially catering just for fun. It's not my full business.
It's like you can.
If I ever have time to do it.
Environmental impact. There's a lot of debate about that. So what's your take on it?
Well, again, it depends on the species. We're talking one big thing that I really am a proponent for, and through my Oceanwise ambassadorship, is I want to focus on restorative species regardless. So bivalves and kelp. You know how much I love kelp. Like kelp is my favorite ingredient on earth, right? And I believe in it so much. So when it comes down to those, I would say before we even talk about that, we should be talking about things that need zero input, right? Like something that's filtering through the ocean. If it's oysters, mussels, clams, gooey duck, right? Razor clam, like scallops, anything like this, where we don't have to put feed as foods into it, but it just filters everything. And especially when it comes down to kelp, where it's like, carbon, it takes in carbon. It could be a future plastic source, fuel source, but also the most delicious food source, but also provides habitat for that environment, those animals there, or the fish, or any species that are around those farms. And that synergy between it's like, what a beautiful thing. And then when we think aquaculture or farm seafood in general, we always automatically go to the fish. And we don't automatically go to the ones that actually are some of the most sustainable out there. And most people don't even realize, like,
the clams and mussels.
Clams and mussels are all farmed. Like, there's some, sure. Like, if you're dredging the bottom of the ocean and you're destroying the, whatever, the Bay of Fundy or something, and you have, like, just scooping up scallop versus sea star versus rockfish or whatever, then of course, that's ethically ridiculous. But now that we know better, we know how to choose better. And we're really lucky in the West Coast that we have some leading industries to do so. And that and someone like yourself, who is the purchaser and distributor of it all, can actually be a voice for us, people who care about sustainability in general, to make that decision to purchase or not too, right? Or to support them or not as well. And I do find that part of the conversation always gets left out because you just go straight to how about that farmed bluefin tuna, or how about that farmed whatever. Like it's so tricky. At the end of the day, if I forget the statistic, but if we are only eating wild caught fish, there's only so many years left of that, and yet the population grows, and yet the world still needs more and more food security. So if we can't provide it through the ocean, which is the greatest area covering our Earth than the land, why are we so stigmatized behind aquaculture in general, as long as it's responsible? So the ethical thing is, if everyone can claim that they love or hate aquaculture, but without it, I don't think most of us can actually enjoy seafood in general.
I agree with that. I mean, right now there is a big push on wild salmon, or wild fish only. By wild, I'm probably getting a lot of heat for this, but being in the industry for so long, I do see we are in a trend where the ocean is being overfished. With sockeye or wild salmon, it's a 4-year cycle. But even within those 4-year cycles, on the 4th year, the return on it is not that great. So that just tells people and the fisheries that there is something seriously wrong. And I do believe that going into a farmed fish that's sustainably done, ethical, and is the future, it does help. I mean, people at the end of the day need to eat. It's just where they eat.
I'll say it this way, like when it comes down to, we never want to take livelihood away from people, and we're not going to do it. But also, if people can adapt to the times and be responsible the way they want to do it, even if it's through tradition or not, then it's not my place to tell them to stop. But as a consumer, we can start choosing what we believe in doing. And if there's a example, I think with ocean wise, there's like the Gitnao salmon, for instance, right? That's that wild sockeye that is now on the ocean wise proof list, right? So like as the world changes and as the practices changes and as industries within regulations and the industry changes, like sure, there's always that possibility. But I think the bigger question for myself, and like I always pose to people, is like we can think right now or we can think about the future. But if we're thinking about the future, then we're going to stop talking about it. One day we're going to stop talking about fish less and less, even though it's such a precious commodity. And if we were responsible about it collectively, from being a consumer and buying things that we shouldn't buy, all the way to being people getting them for us and procuring it for us as well. Like it's a personal choice, and that's where I think the menus and the education and the conversations like this, like who really knows what's the right thing, you know? And there's probably so many different layers to it all. And at the end of the day, if we're not doing the studies ourselves, we're only reading someone else's study. Who's to say how true it is? But at the same time, you gotta take data where you have data. So you just gotta find out what is your ethical and moral fence for yourself to be on. Which side, or are you teetered between both? Or can we actually see it as a gradient that is that fence constantly moving back and forth? And do we really know which side to be on? Are we on one side and it just moves to the side we're already on? Or is it vice versa, right? Is it farther away from the side that we should be on? But that's what I also find right now is like it is sort of, it's so dynamic, and maybe practices are getting better, but also maybe some practices are getting worse.
That's well said, because where you mentioned that if we're thinking about now versus the future, in the future we're not going to think about wild fish. We look at with meat now. No one ever talks about farm or wild cattle. Wild chicken.
Well, you like, and that's where it comes down to different parts of the world, I think the other thing that I always want to bring up when we're talking about this, we're talking about first world problems.
Yes.
We're not talking about third world survivability or second world like issues, right? We're talking about right now, we can actually make that choice.
Yes.
That's the silly part is like, a good part, but silly is that we actually have a conversation about this when other people don't even have food security.
Yes.
And I'm sure some of it is not good for the environment, or some things like might hurt the ecosystem that you're taking away, a keystone species or something. We're not regulating those, right? But we're just regulating what's first world is with us right now.
Yeah.
And I do find if we have that, then also if everyone has their rights, then everyone has a right to sort of choose. Even if I don't agree with them, if they're eating wild bluefin tuna or something, I might not agree with them. Though at the same time, I can't stop them. But what can stop them is just getting more and more people on board of understanding what is responsible aquaculture, on board of what is responsible in the sense of choosing sustainably and finding the best avenue to make those choices. And like yourself, being and connected with the right people to help guide that choice. You can't, people can eat wild or farm. I'm not going to stop them. But at the same time, we just want to do our advocacy to try to promote what is overall sustainable. We don't want to take away anything from anyone, but at the same time, if we don't adapt, this world is all about evolution. So if we don't evolve, we don't stay.
Yeah. So in the restaurants, when you're creating a dish, is it 50% farm fish, 50% wild? How do you come about what you choose?
I guess like when I write my menus, they all have a purpose behind it. So if someone is like, you have a random person like, why are you choosing steelhead versus like wild salmon or whatever? Wild salmon's better. Yeah, to you it's better. To me, I like this. Right? To me, this works for what we're doing. To me, I can get this fresh. To me, whatever. These are the advantages for myself and for what we believe in here. If you want wild salmon, I'm sure someone down the road will have it.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the choices while we make, and we can back up why we want to make them for the overall concept of what we're doing. Right? But we're not going to cowtail to one item to make it like fit someone else's perspective.
Okay. Quality and taste. Have you noticed any difference between farm versus wild? For example, staple fish. Salmon is quite generic.
Well, the biggest thing, and again, we're going to talk a lot about golden eagle just because I think I'm a huge fan of them, and I believe and I hope that you are too. With that said, I mean, when can you actually have sashimi grade sable fish in this planet that's not going to make you sick or full of parasites?
Yeah.
Like, I remember so many times if you're butchering a halibut, right? Like 40-pound halibut, or like even though the sable fish is like, again, those big ass sable fish you used to get, like number one, I never even seen them ever again.
Yeah.
And when you did, you don't recognize how much parasites are in there as well. Yeah. But like even just like that, like, again, halibut's delicious. And halibut's like iconic to us, but people always forget the side of the parasites that live in them too, right? So we're just talking about taste and look and feel. Like if we know that we can have sable fish, which is already, I don't want to say a miracle, but like with these people knowing with Golden Eagle, Terry and Jade and the team, if they actually know how to proliferate the species, like, you know, I think we're lucky enough to go on a farm tour before too, and I'm not sure if you're as lucky as me, but I got to like push the eggs out of the fish as well. You know?
No.
Yeah,
When we went, they pulled the fish to X-ray, but it wasn't quite ready to push the eggs out.
I was lucky enough to like you know, extract the eggs. Like the fish is alive, the fish goes back in. Like who knows how old that fish is, 20 years or 30 years or something. But like to actually like feel that process and to know like every time they do it is a next batch of sable fish coming out, but it's done with someone who is a scientist who knows what they're doing, who actually loves the fish more than you could believe. And again, it's fully transparent. They let us film every aspect of this thing, right? Like from the hatchery to the farm to the little ones to like the eggs to like everything. Like,
from beginning to end.
Yeah, from beginning to end and all the way to Kayuke. I do find that again, if someone has nothing to hide with what they're doing, even if the fish doesn't taste better, it does though. But even if the fish doesn't taste better, it already tastes better because you believe in what they're doing. I always say that in the cooking, like it's a silly comparison, but like if you had the best chef in the world make the same dish as the worst chef in the world, but then you had paired with the best chef is the worst server who didn't care and didn't put any effort into like just threw the dish on the table, splattered everywhere, and like just gave you the worst service versus someone like so passionate about talking about the same food. The food might not look as nice, might not exactly taste the same, but then the person delivering it to you like just gives you an empowered speech of passionate speech about why this dish is so purposeful and meaningful and why it would be so delicious. I bet you that dish would taste better.
So would you say it's a placebo effect, or
no?
It's actually something that triggers in the brain.
No, like more for my hipster mindset. I'm just saying this in that sense. When it comes down to like we're just talking about like taste and like just real flavors and stuff. Like, I mean, again, it's super fatty. It cooks differently. It doesn't melt. It doesn't do all these different things. And again, like I'm not saying wild sailfish doesn't taste awesome. I still think it tastes awesome.
But you would never have it as sashimi.
But I can't have it as sashimi. I can't do the same things I want. I can't have the liver, right? I can't turn that into additional flavor. We don't have the head. You know, like you don't have the parts that are also really precious to the animal. Yeah. You know, I'm not even sure with all the sable fish that's being the wild stuff. Again, it just as delicious, right? But like, because usually the frozen scene the head's cut off right away, and everything else. Like, I'm wondering what's going on there. Does it get thrown back in the ocean? Is it bait? I don't know, right? And again, I'm not here to speculate, but there's just again, if we're talking about responsible aquaculture, then if it's from bivalves and shellfish farming all the way to kelp, two very good examples of transparent, responsible aquaculture like golden eagle sablefish, then I'm a fan, hugely.
I would like to educate our viewers and listeners a little more about health implications, because there's a lot of debate about that, because they say that farm fish are injected with steroids or countless things that is not good for us humans. So what's your thoughts on
that? I think like we really can't, I'll say it this way, like going to golden eagle sablefish, the actual like open pen ocean farming, and living there and watching them work and not seeing one time they're putting any sort of steroids or something into the water, just like hand fed everything and hand cared for. And with the people that I went with, the chef and the videographer, like we always say actually that moment changed our lives, changed our perspective even more than we already thought we knew. So I always find if you don't actually live it, if you don't actually see it, which is really difficult, it's obviously a privilege to have that transparency. But if you don't live it or see it, everyone can just make up whatever claims they want to create the agenda that they want. And because we're not there to see it. So I don't really know. But the ones that I do know who do it responsibly, I never see those issues, personally.
Would you say that it has the same health benefits versus farm, or would it be one better than the other?
Well, I guess like if you dig deep into what is being fed into the farm fish, then you'll get something. You'll understand like what formula they're being fed or how organic the food is or whatever it may be. But at the same time, look at all the pollution that we put into the ocean. Look at all the stuff that we put in there and all the leaking like crude oil and all, especially all the microplastic that can get into all the food sources that we have. If you can find microplastic bag at the bottom of the Mariana Trench and find microplastic at the top of Mount Everest, I'm pretty sure that's an issue, right? So we can say it's wild is better, but we can also say, oh, the only way to get certain species wild is to bottom trawl or something.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe it tastes better, but then what else did you do that has hurt so much more of the ecosystem? So it's like a never-winning story, you know. So like as long as we are more transparent and understand the what and hows and whys people do stuff, if it's from wild or to farm, then at least same thing. I always say like you can't force people to change, but you can try your best to open their mind and their perspective. It may never change them, but at least we can do what we can. And we're lucky if we operate restaurants or operate mini restaurants or open mini restaurants, or you have basically majority of the city vouching for you, then at least we can do our part. We can control what we believe, and then people are asking for different things, and you can see where the market lies, right?
Yeah.
And you can see where the demand is, but also you can say, hey, look, but have you tried this? Have you thought about this, right? Like, why do you want that specific thing versus what's holding you back? Because I always find people are creatures of habits, right? Myself included, right? It's hard to break out of a certain habit. So like if you're used to using a certain thing and then you change it after, it causes some chaos. And in a world like the restaurant world where it's already, the margins are so slim already, the emotions are so high most of the time, and the pressures are constant, right? Then change is just another thing you don't want to deal with. But it takes a stronger mentally, mental fortitude and mental strength to be the one who wants to do a little bit differently, right? Even if it's just incremental. It might be too late, even incrementally, but at least you're trying versus someone just giving in.
Yeah.
Who wants to, like, honestly, who wants to support a loser, right? Like,
very true. So back to the sustainability side of things, where you and I talked about how fish farming can alleviate the wild population. How would you educate people, your customers?
Yeah, every and anything you can do. If it's from, example, the BC Seafood Festival, if it's all the, like next week, like I said, if we're gonna cook for in Maple Ridge, and we're there to raise money for the Hospice Society or something, but it has nothing to do with farm fish, doesn't or aquaculture or wild, it would still bring that story into the environment. Moments like this where we're talking about it, if it's causing a good feeling or causing a controversial feeling, it doesn't matter. If it's every little conversation I have with the cooks, they're like, oh, how come you're using this fish? It's like, you know, why can't we just get the portion or something, which is perfectly good too. But if we're using the golden eagle, why can't you just get a portion? No, because this is how the fish is farmed. You don't understand the story and the journey this fish needs to get to be here, being fresh, being sashimi great. So this is how we respect it. This is why it's more difficult for your everyday, but also educate you for your everyday. So in the future, when you actually touch another version of whatever species you're really more educated, not just really educated, taste, feeling, poetry of taste, feeling, but also your story behind it. So if you start saying, frozen, gigantic, frozen, whatever, gigantic toothfish, that's not sustainable for toothfish. That's not sustainable. Tell me what happened there. Tell me what happened there. Yeah, exactly. Like all the other things that you don't recognize, right? And not to be ignorant about the things that could happen. And not to be ignorant about the things that could look into yourself, at least. And those little moments are can believe it's wow, then what's like that's your opinion. I value that. That's your opinion. I value that. I'm also choosing this for a purpose. I can tell you why if you want to know if not that. I can tell you why if you want to know if not that. It's not the fact that it was why you do this thing. The fact that they do it like that, right? They do it like that.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on regulation standards about that, political fields about that?
What I know is that it's, and not knowing it as a fact, but just hearing through the grapevine, it is political.
Yeah.
You know, and even in every organization, they are run differently. If I'm talking from one organization to the next, they will have different backing or different sort of feeling of what they're supporting, right? And it's pretty obvious. So you can see even within our own province, there's two different competing sustainability-minded groups. Some might at one point say wild salmon is a no-no, or versus other people say farm salmon is the no-no versus the wild stuff. And it's just like a presidential debate, just like politics in general, it's always going to be a debate, right? And the only people who are suffering from it are the fisher folk, the people in our food security, and ourselves, who have to then either adjust or be persecuted or celebrated depending what you choose to do at that specific time on Earth, in our existence. So let's not be blind to the fact that a lot of it is probably very political.
Yeah, touching up on that, it's like just recently the extension of the 5 year for farm fish to transition to land-based. There's been a great divide between indigenous people, and my belief it is politics, because there's the ones that really support farm fish, because really the farm fish is all done on indigenous land. They all work together, and then there's one that of course support the wild side of things as well. But we have sites where we do see that there is overfishing.
Yeah, for sure. And then also just to say, if it becomes land-based, then you still got to clear land to take a farm. So again, whose land is that, and how much trees are you cutting down, and then what roads are you building to get there? X, Y, and Z, right? How many trucks you got to drive there? How much electricity needs to be transported to that area, or how much? And probably a lot of those places are run by generator.
Yeah.
So how much how much diesel you got to pump into that every single day to keep it going? Yeah. So who knows? But again, I don't know if there because I haven't been there.
Yeah.
So I can't. For everyone here, I can't say.
Right. So you've been to Golden Eagle's hatchery and farm. Yeah. What was your favorite experience? What's your favorite experience there?
A few. So one was obviously cooking for the chief in the community and utilizing their hard work when we were complete outsiders. At first, we were kind of say hi, then I say back, just because what are you doing here? Why are you filming me? But then once we opened up, we can see that we're respecting the land, we're respecting the fish. Everything we made in that menu, Jade, Terry, the film crew, right? All of us, I felt not to over exaggerate, I swear we risked our lives to get there. Because, it was in a little dinghy boat, a metal tin boat, and then we're going through waves that we shouldn't be going through. Wow. Right? As the guy's holding his $15,000 camera that he bought himself, and then just to get to a little edge of tiny part of this peninsula. And then when we got there, it was so scary because the boat was just splashing against the shore, and then we had to hook it up, we had to anchor it to a cliff of rocks. Again, these are experts, so they know what they're doing. So everything was normal there, but to some amateur like ourselves, we went up. So then our purpose going there was to kelp. Our purpose going there was to forage for wild onions, different ferns, find mushrooms, and all these other things that Jade showed us that we never even knew were edible. While doing that, they're oh great, look at these tracks. And they're what is it? It's a wolf. Oh, they're wow. It's fresh. I'm great. Right? And then to a pretend outdoorsman like myself, I love nature, but I'm scared to be in. But to be a pretend outdoorsman like me, man, I was it's creepy, but I felt safe because Jade was there, right? Kieran was there. Yeah. They knew exactly what they're doing. They had shown no fear. They knew what to do if something was there, so I was not afraid either. But if I was to do that myself, or with people who didn't have that sort of education and experience in the wild, I would never put myself in that situation.
Did you guys get to see that wolf?
Well, I'm sure it saw us. But we didn't see it because if we saw it, it would be a problem already. Right? And that's the same area where they filmed that documentary Sea Wolves,
okay, yeah.
So I think it was we're just all a little bit this is a little bit scary for me, but totally normal for them. And same thing, that's where we got gooseneck barnacles. The whole point was to get gooseneck barnacles.
I've never had gooseneck barnacles. I've heard great things about it.
Yeah, it's really creepy looking and alien-esque.
Yeah.
But
it's an alien egg or something.
Yeah, it does look like the movie Aliens, but with a way longer neck to it, right? I would say it kind of sort of reminded me of razor clam. Okay. Personally. Yeah. Or at least the way we cooked it.
Is it a lot of work to eat?
Not really, but it was a lot of work just to get because they're so hard to you have to use a serrated shovel to try to scoop them off of the rocks, and then you get cluster of them at the same time. But what I experienced was like everyone loves to talk about boosting barnacles. Everyone's like, can you get it? Can someone forage it? And they're like the most expensive ever if you even get them. If they're even fresh by the time they get here. So like obviously worth the journey. I've never even seen one in real life. Let alone eat it, right? Let alone cook it for the chief.
Oh. How'd you guys cook it?
We did a few ways. We did steam ones. We made like one. We made it into pasta. We did like not like a chill presentation as well. Like about 3 weeks. But I mean, we were cooking for like 20 people while filming the thing, while making food, while having to like go get the food ourselves. It was. That's why I say like the whole thing itself was such an incredible journey because you didn't just learn about the people, the livelihood, the fish, but to live there every day in an environment where it is truly wild. You know, like, and that's the other thing is like, they choose to be so far because that's the ideal space for it. It's not the easiest, it's not the most accessible space. It's in fact one of the least accessible spaces, right? Like one of the storms, someone's boat flipped over.
Wow.
Right? Like, when we went to, it's like the bottom ocean. Like, it's like a $400,000 boat. You know, like, or whatever it is. So like, there's real life danger there. Like, but people are putting themselves through that. Just like any fisherman on the open ocean or anywhere too, same thing, but to see them put that love into it and see them put like that effort to like stay true to their purpose and their mission, and to go through all the little journeys. Oh yeah, that makes it real.
I guess you have a lot more respect for the ingredients.
You have you forged it, right? You forged it, but you used it to tell the story of the sablefish. Right, the whole purpose was that sablefish, and the whole thing that brought the community together, that made everyone who were there because of the fish. Right. So like that's the beacon. That's a beacon to sustainability.
Like, well, being at Golden Eagle, what kind of innovations have you seen in terms of aquaculture?
I mean, I went to where the sturgeon farm was before, where Northern Divine is. They also have, I think they were doing coho or something there as well, or some sort of species. I forget which one it was. Been to many aquaculture farms for shellfish, and been to a few kelp farms. So when it comes down to fish, like actual fin fish, I think the most innovative was the science behind knowing how that they are the only people on this planet who know how to breed them, basically, right? Or at least put the effort to breed, because that was the most innovative. Like, it was innovative to see the pens and how much they cared, that they would dive, almost like the owner himself was diving to clean the nets. This is where we got these giant ass scallops that we cooked, right? Like, it's from the net. Like, I still have the shells. Like it's grown so much into the net that the imprint of the net is on the shell. Wow. Right, and so I use it for display all the time. It's not pretty. It looks ugly, but it tells the best story. You know, it's like that ugly chowder we but yeah. So I think for innovation, just like to see that they have a whole life support system, to have a whole system where, like, when I worked at the aquarium, you don't realize how complicated it is to have like a life support system for all the fish, you know? And like keeping the salinity proper, keeping the waters clear, keeping enough oxygen in the water. But when you're doing it with millions of gallons versus like your home tank, it's a completely different operation. So we're trying to, you know, sustain, grow, breed, inseminate all these fish, let alone get the eggs out of a female while keeping them alive and sedated, but like healthy and well prolific, like keep them constantly proliferating for you in a healthy fashion. I did find that it was like so much more science than you actually realize in a place that's like, oh, you're just growing. Everyone's just like, oh, you just have fish. Like, if you think about how the fish got there, or how like from fried to like, you know, 5-pound fish it is, no average. And anyone can say like, oh, it's not good, or aquaculture is not good. But you know what goes into it. You know how much science, economics go into it, like how much people's livelihoods go into it, how much it supports the community, how much love they have. Like, the people who are the scientists behind it know and can answer every damn question you have and more, and school you with whatever you want to ask them, either if you're against what they're saying, right? But so that's the tricky part. Like, no matter how many places you go to, even though I would say that's very few for myself, and I wish I could see more, you don't really know until you're there. And that's why I'm saying it's still life-changing, because to let someone see the whole process, you even drive the ROV to look at right, the fish down there. Like, you want to try? It's like going down to the bottom of the Titanic, and like, how many people get to see it? Almost nobody. But if you can, then it's worth telling that story. Even if people on the superficial level never really care, or on the superficial level never care to delve deeper into it, just hear what's negative or hear what's good about it, just like, and form an opinion before you have that opportunity to like delve deeper. But again, it is a privilege because I don't know how many other people, maybe you get to do it one day, but very few people have the opportunity to go to those farms, right? And
I've
again,
only been to the hatchery side of the farm. I guess my favorite moment was seeing a baby sablefish under the microscope.
Yeah.
And having it move and all the food in the stomach, you know. That was unique. I have it on my phone actually.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I did end up going to Lower Snake 1 year. That was a bit of a journey, but it's cool to see science behind man-made lake where they actually control different levels of the temperature in the water.
Yeah.
So that was very unique to see.
And there's so many great examples out there, but there's also so many people who might have opinions about it because they've never been, you know, because they don't want to, like, your conversations always lead me to like the Kampachi or something, right? And the geometric domes that are floating in the middle of like Hawaiian oceans. And like, I believe in that aquaculture, but at the same time, sometimes I think about it, like, am I believing based on the people I trust telling me? Do I believe it based on what is said on their website? Do I believe it based on why am I believing it? But at the same time, like, at least people like us are looking into it. So we don't really know where our food comes from sometimes. Like, it's probably even harder to ask where your beef came, which farm your beef came from. From Alberta, it's from Alberta, but you don't know exactly which farm, because it's a conglomerate of farms. It's probably even easier to say, I know that sablefish came from exactly this time, it was bred on this day, the tag says this.
No, the mother.
Right? The mother to like what genome to whatever, the scientists can tell you like every aspect about that lineage of that fish. And also, like, in other ways, even if you don't have to delve that deep into it, you know where it came from. That's it. That's as simple as it is. You know what community is supported. So I always find that there's like that divide. It's so easy to blame the ocean version of farming, but it's so easy to sort of negate the land version of the farming. Yeah, all necessary to all our existences, but then why are we being so biased between some of them, especially if they are truly responsible and regulated.
But I would like to finish with your thoughts on the future of dining.
Future of dining? Yeah. Well,
could be anything.
Well, as a joke, I think McDonald's will own every single it'll have the market share of fast food, but it'll also probably own some of the most high-end Michelin restaurants on earth. This might be hundreds of years later. Like, this is just my silly version of it, because like at the end of the day, like the restaurant industry is like, I'm opening restaurants as we speak. Yeah. So like I'm creating the concepts. You know, it's a huge privilege to be able to even do that. Let like then build it, operate it, right, sustain it. Yeah. So to see that, I mean, how difficult is this business already? The future of dining, and I think that we have to be even more innovative. We have to be even more responsible. We have to have a purpose to what we do. Like Oceanwise and us always have said, like, you need to have a mission on the menu. You don't have to print the mission on the menu, but you should be very clear what that mission is, right? If it's not just as superficial as like, I just want to cook sustainably because everyone wants to say, I want to cook locally. Yeah, those are almost like bare basic requirements at this point. But what story are you telling? What purpose are you doing? Who are you supporting throughout this process? And I feel like that's where the menus need to go as well, because if they don't go to a place where people feel good about it and can give back, but also feel good as consumers, they won't survive because it's too competitive and the margins are too small. And if we don't see it as a platform in general, knowing how well people can cook these days, if you go to any YouTube, everyone has a sous vide at home now. Yeah. Everyone has all these things. If you don't do that, if you don't innovate or stay ahead of the game, the home cook can outcook you. You know, and they could probably do better.
I agree.
So you have to stay the experts in the field by being constantly evolving your expertise. Yeah. And purpose and mission on that menu.
Do you think there's going to be a next big trend? Poke was.
Next big trend. I mean, I think it depends what environment we are, which communities we're part of, where we live in the world. It'll be really hard to predict. I mean, I wish I could say, but I would love to say, I hope to say, that the only trend going forward is sustainable seafood,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's through wild stock, and definitely supporting the responsible aquaculture out there, and not just forgetting that aquaculture is not just fish. You know, there's so many other things from the kelp to the bivalves to everything else. If we can recognize those things, then at least I would say, like, if we can go down the trend of recognizing how to create better food security for ourselves while doing responsibly for the environment, then that should be the trend. Yeah.
Where can people follow you?
Well, they can follow you. They can find me through your Instagram, right? They should go to Hook and Nerd. But I mean, I'm not a big social media guy, but if they want to go to like Chef Will Lew, Lew, be my guest, right? Like, let's engage a conversation there. But also let's utilize the platform of social media or YouTube or wherever this is going to go to just continue the conversation. Might be too late, might be too early, but we still got to continue that conversation. Right? Can't give up on the mission.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the kitchen table. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights and your passion for cooking, the kitchen, and everything related to the culinary world.
Thank you.
It's opened my mind to a lot of things, and I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.
Thank you. You too.